All right. Good day, everybody. Good day. I hope everybody's doing well. As you guys can see, it's been a minute since I've been online, and I wanted to make sure that I reached out to everybody and said hello. Um, and more than anything else, I wanted to be sure that I could let people know what's been happening to me as of recent. A lot of people haven't been seeing me, and there's a reason for that. But anyway, let's give everybody a moment to come in. Do me a favor and share this with about five other friends of yours. Share this with about five other friends so they could join as well. And the reason why this is important again is because what's happening is yeah, I've had some recent tragedy in my family, and it's taught me some valuable lessons. And one of the coping mechanisms that I use to deal with these lessons is to find the lesson to teach other people so they'll be willing to hear about it and willing to learn. And I find that if I'm able to teach others, it helps me deal with the tragedy a little bit better. I'm not saying this is legitimate therapy or anything like that, but nonetheless, I feel like that it helps. Um, and so because of that, that's where we're going. So greetings to my TikTok family. I see y'all. All right. Appreciate y'all for tapping in. Greetings to my YouTube family. For those of you who didn't know, I do have a YouTube, so I appreciate y'all for tapping in as well. And greetings to my Instagram family. So let's go ahead and dive into it, y'all. Let me tell you what's happened. So basically, what has happened in my family is my father has been sick for for years, for over a decade, and as of November 9th, my father made his transition to the other side. And the reason why this was tragic is because even though somebody is sick, you could think that you're prepared because you're like, oh, he's sick. We'll deal with it when the day comes. We're prepared and everything else. And in all honesty, no matter how expecting you are, one of my lessons is you're never prepared. And one of the things that you want to do is you do want to try to put yourself in the best position possible to deal with that situation. What do I mean by that? One of the things that we know for a fact, when someone passes, your emotions are high, so therefore the clarity and the logic of your thinking might be low. All right. And so, with that in mind, what ends up happening is you may not be able to execute on some of the things that you were supposed to, that your family wished for, in the event of them passing. So, my father has some things that he wanted to be executed, and I saw. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. I saw the effect of this firsthand. And so let me give y'all some context and some backstory real quick. Back in 2008, my dad, he suffered a heart attack and a stroke. And what ended up happening is we went to the doctors, and in the emergency room, the doctor didn't have no good bedside manners. He said, your dad had what he said was, your dad has a brain tumor and he's not going to make it. What do you want to put on his tombstone? So when the doctor spoke like that, my mom lost it. So she lost it. She wasn't going to be able to deal with the situation no more. So from that moment forward, I knew. I said, okay, I'm gonna have to deal with this. I'm gonna have to make sure I'm ready for this. And even though my dad has been sick for over, dang, since 2008, basically, he was sick before then. But even before that moment, he was sick all the way up to 2008, or from 2008 on. But it got really bad from 2008 onward. He was sick before then as well. The main thing that I saw is, thank you for that. Thank you for that. Thank you for the prayers. We definitely receive them. That's another thing I learned too. I thought that because I'm the one who has to take care of the estate, I'm the one who has to be strong. I'm the one who has to take care of things, and I misunderstood strength for not accepting people's blessings and not accepting people's care, and that was one of the mistakes that I made. And one of the things I realize is I could accept your love, I could accept your prayers, I could accept all those things to give me strength or to give me more strength to deal with the situation. I have no problem admitting that I confused that at first. So but in this process, I've learned a lot. And so my dad making his transition and not being here no more, even in his transition, he still taught me lessons. Good God. And so I say that because this is the situation that we were faced when it came to my mother and what the doctors told her in that emergency room at that time. So up to that point, now mind you, I've been in the life insurance industry since December of 2008. Okay, December of 2008. Throughout this whole time, my dad was uninsurable. His condition was already too bad for us to even qualify to get him any insurance. That's some of the things that was happening and was going on. So one of the things that happened is I ended up or not I, our family ended up saving. My mom in particular ended up saving. And one of the things that we were worried about, whew, so one of the things that we were worried about a lot is I want you to imagine this. Your dad is pronounced as dead already, and he's not going to make it, and then somehow he makes it, and then your mother is the reason he stays alive from 2008 up to now, right? Because she basically stops working and dedicates everything she has into keeping her spouse alive. And so we respected my mom for that, and I'm the oldest of three. Me and my siblings did whatever we could to support in the best way we knew how. You know, we're still humans and still had our own moments as well. But the point of the matter is with all this happening, there would be times when we would get calls, and my dad has to go to the hospital, and it's an emergency to everybody else. But for us, it's just a routine because he went to the hospital so much. And this last time when he got called to the hospital, I thought it was just another routine moment. I didn't think this would be the last moment. Um, and in these last moments, what ended up happening was I noticed how from the ER we were transitioned to ICU, then from ICU to another unit in the hospital where basically we were just providing him with comfort and waiting for him to transition on his own. This is what came of that situation. Now, throughout this process, there was now I do want to give some of the people, I don't want to name the hospital out of respect, but there were some people in the midst of this storm that provided great insight and great care throughout this process. And let me tell you what I'm talking about. So this last time my dad went into the hospital, we were faced with basically we were faced with a situation where the doctors told us, hey, his situation is grave. We don't think he's going to make it. Here's what's ended up happening. And so they're telling us all this. Now, I received it and I knew that this could be dangerous. However, he pulled out of this before. But then when they went into the details of the situation, I said, oh man, I don't know if we're going to be able to pull out of this one. It was almost like we're in a superhero movie where they told us, hey, I know you won fights before. I know you've overcame things before. But this time, I don't think your dad has what it takes to overcome. So, in those moments, we have to learn two things. Number one, we can't give in to the bad news and just say all hope is lost. So we didn't. But at the same time, we can't be overly expecting like, oh, he beat this before, we can beat it again. So what I decided and what some of us ended up doing together is we said we're just going to appreciate the moment and be present. We're going to be present for my father in this moment. And the reason why this was important to us is because what ended up happening is as he began to decline, um, he was conscious with us for 3/4 of the time. I choose to believe that in those conscious moments, we were able to get him to smile. We were able to get him to, um, I don't know, feel peace. But one of the things that ended up happening, y'all, is uh, we have people that believed that he could make it out because we made it out before, and then all of a sudden, his health took a vicious right turn, and when it took that hard right, I knew there wasn't no coming back at that point. So for all of you that think that, oh, you know what, I don't have millions of dollars, I don't have an estate, I don't have to worry about anything, that's not true. Let me tell you why. My father has some stuff, but we moved a lot of the stuff out of his name, so we didn't have to worry about that part. But in him passing, um, and it happened, geez, it happened like it was overnight. Yes, thank you for that. Thank you for that. He was good one moment, and then, like I said, it just happened out of nowhere, a hard right, and then everything started spiking. And then that's when I realized that, okay, let me at least start talking to the people about what's going on. The hospital was coming to us and asking us about paperwork. They were asking us about what we need to take care of. So why am I sharing this with you? Because what I've learned, see, in the life insurance business, I've only had to pass out 3 death claims. And what that means is our plot. Thank you for that, Troy. Thank you. What that means is your client passed away, and you're getting the death benefit, and you're awarding it to the family. Um, I've only had to give out 3. Even 1 is hard, in my opinion. But the biggest mistake that I've seen people make is they say, I don't have nothing, so I don't have to worry about nothing. And that is the biggest fallacy that we could ever be told. Okay? You being in a state within yourself is worth some value. So because of that, people want to make sure they keep record of you and know what is happening of you. So there has to be record from the hospital to the county to the state as far as what's happening and how you've transitioned. There is value in you, whether you believe it or not, whether you've accomplished what you wanted to accomplish in life or not. There's value in you. And like I said, a lot of stuff that my father had, we moved out of his name. And when he got sick for these past 10 years, he wasn't able to accumulate as much wealth as he had planned when he was still healthy, right? And yet, we still had to go through paperwork. We still had to go through records. We still had to go through all these things. You know what's important to the county when you pass away? Your family history. They want to know who your mother was, who your father was. What is the family history? What is going on with that? These are questions that you have to answer during this process. But you know what's hard in that? If you're emotional, rightfully so, if you're emotional, there's no way you can answer these questions. Another thing that they kept pressing us about is they kept saying, what does your dad want in this situation? What does your dad want in this situation? And me just being transparent, there was a point where I broke. I thought I knew everything. Because I've had these conversations with my dad before. I've talked to my mom before. And so, when this happens, we're going to do X, Y, Z. Let me just tell y'all, writing stuff down can help tenfold. I can't stress that enough. Write stuff down so that your family can remember your wishes when it's all said and done. And be sure to update your wishes when it's all said and done. Because in those moments when we have to deal with these situations, sometimes we might forget what was told to us until after the fact. Because remember, the doctors are there to execute on their end, to do what they need to do. And I remember when my dad was in the hospital and his health was declining, while we were there, another family had just lost a family member to, I believe it was a gunshot or gunshot violence or gun violence. And I asked the nurse, I said, do you guys get what's it called? Do you guys get counseling? Like, can you go to counseling and is it free for y'all? Because this like while I was there and all the people that I saw, I said, this is a lot. She said that we're taught how to objectify everything when it's not our personal family. So we only get counseling when it's something like children, which is something that all of us, could relate to and it could be serious for. Um, that was shocking to me, right? Watching how they deal with the bodies of other people was shocking to me. Watching how certain people start treating you once they know that there's no return from where you're going, or once they feel there's no return from where you're going, the difference in treatment is amazing. And I don't, I'm when I say amazing, I'm not talking about good, and I'm not calling it bad. It's just a realization. Um, So again, number one lesson that I could tell everybody is just be present in the moment because you don't know when that moment is gone. Again, I when we first went to the hospital, I made the mistake of thinking that just it's just a routine check in. He has some health issues, but we're gonna check back in and he'll be good and he'll come back out and we'll be great. He never made it out. Right. Number two, write stuff down, y'all. Write stuff down. Write stuff down so that you can make sure that you don't forget, and you know how to deal with or your loved ones know how to deal in your favor, because the most important thing that the hospitals are concerned about is operating how the person that the patient wants to be dealt with. So the hospital is not going to listen to you. Now listen to this very carefully. If you're not legally married, the hospital could legally disregard what you have to say. If you're not if you are a stepchild, they can legally disregard what you're saying. So and what I'm saying is the first person they're going to listen to is a spouse. In some occasions, they don't even listen to you if you're the biological child, right? They don't even listen to you if you're the biological child. This is why the paperwork is so important. And the paperwork that I'm talking about is called advanced directives, right? Where you're writing down the treatment that you're expecting when you're in a condition that you cannot make decisions on your own. And then I also learned about there's two different powers of attorneys. There's a financial power of attorney, and there's a health financial power. There's a health power of attorney. These are different. Now, mind you, I've been in life insurance. I understood that there is another side to life insurance which involves people passing away. I guess you could say because of my dad's situation, I purposely didn't try to learn about that too much. I learned about it enough to make sure I could take care of my clients in case that time comes and I could guide them to the right resources to help them. But there were just certain things I guess I avoided because the situation was too close to home, is my point. But these are some of the things that I would say. The other thing that I will also mention to everybody is strength doesn't equate to not receiving love, help, and emotional gifts from everybody else. Like I said, I made that mistake initially and I corrected it. But I just want to share that with y'all. In addition to that, so once the transition happens, you have cremation homes, funeral homes, and things of that nature. One of the things I remember making a phone call because I said, "Hey, you know what? This it might happen." We've cut when we came to the conclusion that my dad will be making this transition. I made a couple phone calls to find out which funeral home would be best for my father. And one of the things that one of the funeral homes said is, "Yes, we'll be more than happy to assist you." But in the state of California, we can't take, um, what he said was, we can't take your money ahead of time. Well, anyway, the lesson to be learned is a lot of what you want to be done requires finances, and they will not move until your finances are squared away, right? Like I said, luckily we had the money saved up because my dad couldn't qualify for life insurance. Um, but it still didn't feel the best, going through that situation. So we were able to give them the money. We were able to pay for everything that we needed for this current situation. But because they deal with this so much, it's no problem for them to say, "Oh, well, let's just put this on." It's business, and in those moments of business being done, it's easy for you to say, "Well, damn, they're just treating me like a number." And in some cases, unfortunately, that's the way they deal with it, so that they don't get messed up by dealing with so many different people's families and so many people passing away. They're trying not to connect too much, is what I learned, right? Because I asked, I told them, I said, one of your workers seems very, very rude. What's going on? And the person told me, you know what? We apologize. We also teach our people not to connect emotionally. To me, there's a difference between not connecting and being professional and polite. And that lady was just straight up rude. And again, I'm not going to mention any companies because I'm gonna wait till I calm down, go back and look over everything to make sure I'm not in the wrong. But basically, what happened is when my mom, now my parents been married for over 40 years. My mom didn't want to fill out the paperwork; she wanted me to do it, and the lady had the nerve to say, "Well, I know that you want to do this, but your mom could sign her rights over to you, but if she's gonna do that, she might as well sign for everything else too. It's not that hard. All she has to do is click a button." Totally disregarding my mom's feelings in the matter, right? Um, and that's what I mean when I said, "Damn, this is a business to people. This has nothing to do with feelings. This has nothing to do with an emotional bond. This has nothing to do with what kind of relationship you have with your parents, what kind of relationship you have with your siblings. Like, whoever this is to you doesn't matter to the business side. So because of that, the best way to protect yourself from all that extra nonsense is take care of the business of the estate up front, and understand that whether you are a child or an adult, and whether you are rich or you're poor, we still have to handle paperwork. We still have to handle paperwork. We still have to get stuff done. We still have to do things on your behalf. We still have to act in your favor. So because of that, you still have to, don't ever excuse yourself from doing so because you think you don't have value that you bring to the family or to this world. Because when you pass away, they expect somebody to do something for you. If not, then the state can step in and do whatever they want, but nonetheless, paperwork's going to get done on your behalf. Does that make sense, everybody? Again, because we learned that the transition of a human being is still a business. I appreciate that, brother. Thank you very much. Because the transition of a human is still a business, and the other side is acting in that business for their benefit, you got to think of that ahead of time, whether you feel like you're bringing value here or not. And I can't stress that part enough, right? I've had people tell me before, I don't need to worry about life insurance because I don't have no family. Um, Somebody's gonna have to take care of your estate. I've had people tell me before, I don't have to worry about life insurance because I have no assets. I don't need a trust because I don't have no assets. That's not true, because again, not only did I experience it, I'm watching it with other people in the hospital that are parallel to our situation, right? Now, obviously, I didn't get into super detail with them because that's private, but you guys get my point. So let me say this. I apologize if you feel like I'm rambling because part of this is therapy for me. Therapy. I said counseling. Therapy is what I was saying, is what I meant to ask. Do the nurses get therapy for all the trauma that they experience and see in other people? Um, this is a sense of therapy for me because if I feel like I'm teaching somebody else, it allows me to process what's happened a little bit better. So if I'm rambling, that's just, it is what it is. That's what's happening. So what's happening with my father now, we're still putting things together for his ceremony. Since we got everything squared away, he's going to be having his ceremony very soon. And my dad's originally from Tennessee, so we have people that are joining in on the ceremony from, that's not in California. So because of that, we had to extend it out a little bit. But just that whole process and the questions that they ask, the care about your lineage, the care about all these different things. And so, you know what that made me realize? You taking the time to have family meetings with your family to talk about your legacy, to talk about where you came from, to talk about who your great grandparents are. And guess what? If you don't know, that's okay. But you can start holding meetings where you explore that and you start finding out about that, right? Because guess what? When you get ready to pass away, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. All is well. All is well. So, so with some of the questions they were asking, they asked questions like what. So it wasn't just what was his mother's name. It was what was his mother's maiden name, right? What's his father's name? And then they would say things like where was he born? So they asked very specific, detailed questions that they knew that they had the right person, because obviously this is further than just identity theft and faking things. Like they could have your social, they can have your social, they can have your name, but they need to make sure they match it up with your family legacy, right? So if this is part of the death process, right? Well, guess what that means? During my life process, guess what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna make sure that I conduct these kind of situations with the family, so that when it comes to people asking questions, if I'm emotionally distraught and can't answer, it can be passed to someone else in the family and they can answer it no problem, right? If we're in a situation where I just can't speak for myself, where someone else can and they could do it no problem. So two things: not only should you hold family meetings, but keep family records. Keep family records, right? And when I say family records, what are we talking about? What type of blood do you have? What type of blood is everybody, right? Because then, with my dad's situation, if they would have talked about a blood transfusion, um, I know that my sister knew who could go ahead and give it to him. I forgot. I didn't know. That's why we got to put down family records, right? Um, and I had to go back and check that. Um, your blood type, your family tree, and then stories about who each person was and what they meant to the family. Because one thing I can promise you is, even if you don't feel like you made millions, or you're successful like you want to be, those who come after you can learn lessons from your wins as well as your losses, or your lessons, I should say. And those are just as valuable as any money that you could pass on to anybody. Um, I would say that's the main thing that I would say is the difference, that I noticed. The amount of papers that we had to fill out was mind numbing, almost, right? And with all that being said, I know this may not have made too much sense as of yet, and that's, to be honest, I'm still processing, I guess you could say. But I will say this: if you guys have any questions about something that I could help with, I want to make sure I can. And yes, I do still take time to myself, where I meditated a little bit, walked around a little bit, just did stuff for myself, to myself. That way I could process this passing on my own. I chose to look at the passing a little bit different. My father's transition a little bit different, so it's not a loss. It's a change or a gain on the other side. But it still hurts. It doesn't mean it's numbing. It still hurts. Um, but I would assume that it takes down some of the pain. So if you guys have any questions, TikTok family, Facebook family, Um, Instagram family, journaling helped me immensely when my dad passed. Love to you. Thank you for sharing that, Evie. Uh, I, I could definitely tell you that I'm going down that same route. Going down that same route. Going down that same route. Um, Another thing that I would add is if you have questions about paperwork and what that looks like. Now, here's one thing I want to put in perspective. If someone was married and they passed away, that's easier because the spouse legally could assume all everything that they had, no questions asked, no problems. Now, obviously, we were concerned about my mother because she had been taking care of my dad for 10 plus years. And one of the things, if you look at the records of everything, caretakers are known to pass away before the clients that they take care of because of how much they dedicate themselves to that person. So, so with that in mind, the other thing, oh, appreciate you, brother. Appreciate you, brother. Um, I totally drew a blank on what I was gonna tell y'all, but that's okay. That's one of them. That's one of the things. That's one of the things that be happening sometimes. Oh, when someone is married and they pass away, when someone is married and they pass away, what happens is, let's say there's a husband and a wife, right? If the husband passes away, the spouse is able to legally inherit everything, no questions asked, no problem. Generally, it's an easier transition. Brian said, prayer helped me a lot when he passed, and instead of trying to find ways to live without, I find ways to live every day with him. Amen to that. Absolutely. And Brother Forrest said, condolences for your loss. I'll pray for your healing and perseverance. I appreciate that, brother. My condolences to you and your family. Oh, Bria, I'm sorry. Bria, I apologize. So, the dangerous part is when, so let's say when my mother passes, well, she doesn't have a spouse right now that could legally inherit her stuff. So that's where now we really got to make sure that we get our paperwork together for my mother, because when she passes and her children, me and my siblings, inherit whatever estate she has left over, well, that's going to be way more. That's going to be way more information, or way more complications than what we care to deal with. And that's another reason why. Oh, we got some trolls in the chat. That's another reason why it's important for you to utilize a trust. A trust isn't really for your spouse, because usually in the United States, your spouse is very good at, I mean, they give stuff to your spouse without a doubt. That's actually why there was a big fight when it came to same-sex marriages and things of that nature, because the inherent inheritance of property, right? Well, I should say one of the reasons that I was aware of. Let me say that. Let me say that. Um, but when you're talking about passing on property, and the property not meaning real estate only, but property meaning anything that you own, what ends up happening is when you have a trust, you're able to bypass a lot of the probate taxes and things of that nature that you'll encumber, especially when we're talking about 401ks, IRAs, and things of that nature. You can run into a lot of problems dealing with that. Thank you, Linda. Absolutely. Um, and yes, so Avery, talking about trust. Trust is one of the ways that you could bypass a lot of those problems. Um, oh, I got you. Human calculator. Good to see you again. I didn't recognize your handle. Oh, okay, I got you now. Oh, that's funny. That was a good laugh. So again, y'all, if you have single parents, one of the most important things you could do, let's remove the trust for right now. Let's remove the trust for right now. One of the most important things you could do if you have a widowed parent or a single parent, two things you want to look into right now. You want to look into a medical power of attorney between you and your siblings for your parent, and you want to look into advanced directives where basically anything that they want and need, any decisions that they would want on their behalf would be something that you have written out so you know how to execute on that. And so when the doctors call you, you know how to tell them what to do and what not to do. For example, one of the things they said is that if your father passes, does he want to be resuscitated, right? And and without talking yes or no, one of the things that they talk about is, well, our process of resuscitation is CPR, but it could be so violent that it'll break their ribs. And so when they come back to, a lot of the patients aren't able to live on because the condition they're in, especially they're elderly, because of the condition they're in with the broken ribs on top of what took them out in the first place. So this is something that you want to be able to look into. If you pass that, man, I can't tell you how many times we were asked that question, even after we answered it. If you were to pass, do they want to be resuscitated, right? And we even asked, well, what about the electric treatment and things of that nature? They said, no matter what, it's all a very violent process. I'm not here to tell you if you should or shouldn't. I'm just here to let you know that these are questions that you got to think about, and why it's important for you to handle that paperwork now, especially, and I can't stress this enough, especially if you have a single parent household or a widowed household, right? Now, once you're able to handle those and you're able to address those questions, oh, and the other thing is they're going to ask you how would you want to be taken care of, assuming that you have to spend more time in the hospital than you care to spend. Meaning, let's give an example of a heart transplant, right? You have a heart transplant and you're recovering in the hospital. They're feeding you food. You would have to indicate what kind of food you want during that process, right? You have to indicate what kind of allergies you have and what kind of foods you can't receive because of this process, right? Or throughout that process. And these are things that you got to think about. And this is why I say it's important for us to have all this laid out. Now, if you have a two-parent household, you could buy some time because they're just going to ask the surviving spouse. But again, the toll, I've witnessed the toll that it took. And man, send prayers to the family that their loved one to gun violence. They were talking to this lady and trying to ask her questions, and she just could not answer. And the reason why is because she was hysterical, understandably so. I mean, her family was taken violently and fast, right? They didn't know what was happening, and so she wasn't able to answer. So even if she did have the answers, she wasn't able to answer because of the state that she was in. Me seeing that was very. I don't know what the word is. I don't want to say humble. I don't know what the word is for that, but it was a very sober experience. Wherever I was emotionally, it brought me back, and it was very sobering. You know. But anyway, and please excuse me if I'm describing this wrong, because I'm just trying to describe it so you guys can know. After all that, if a trust is too intimidating and you decide to take care of at least take care of those, because that's more likely to happen faster than anything else. Because you know what they say, 3 out of 4 people is going to have a medical issue before the age of 60, right? And majority of y'all are going to have that between or under the age of 40, right? The odds of somebody under 40 having a medical issue is higher now. So you definitely want to take care of those. By the way, do I know people that take care of that? Yes. But am I doing this to sell? No, absolutely not. I just want to make sure that I talk to y'all and talk this experience out. Because again, I'm just sharing my experience so you guys are aware, you guys know. And more importantly, or I should say selfishly, I'm doing it just to talk this out so I can feel better and process everything better for myself as well. Um, with all that being said, the main thing is now when we talk about trust, what's the benefits of them? Let's say that you have a widowed spouse who passes away. They have three kids. Uh, when they pass away, if the trust is the beneficiary of everything, well, two things. Number one, the trust could be the beneficiary of stuff. Now, what stuff am I talking about? The annuities, the life insurance, the retirement plans. That's all fine and dandy. Because I don't know if you guys know this. How many of you have had a 401k, IRA, or TSP, or 403b, or some kind of retirement plan, and you listed your children as beneficiaries because you were told you could identify who the beneficiary is? Now, when you did that, did you assume that your children will receive all that money, no problems? Well, one of the things that you got to look into is the probate laws in your state, because in most cases, they will not receive 100% of that money. It'll go to probate first. Your spouse can, but not your children. So the idea of a trust is you get a trust and you take all the assets that you have, move it out of your name, put it in the trust name, so that when you pass away, the assets are still taken care of, and that's one less thing the family has to worry about. Why is that important? Because a trust ain't nothing but a piece of paper, and paper doesn't die, right? Unless you do something to mismanage it and it isn't taken care of anymore. So what ends up happening is now you're put in a position where you can focus on the individual, their health needs and their health concerns, and not worry about the paperwork, because the paperwork is out of the question because it's in a separate estate, being the trust, right? And then if you want to talk about types of trust and things of that nature, that's a whole nother conversation. But as of now, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say thank you for coming on. Thank you for being willing to listen. Thank you for the feedback, and for those of you who shared your blessings and condolences, I want to say thank you for that as well. Again, I just wanted to share. So if you guys have any questions, I can answer. If not, we'll say peace and blessings to everybody else. Thank you for your time, y'all.